So we have a certain approach. Our approach is that we don't have any natural enemies, right? There's no such thing. There's simply no such thing. We have the nations that lived in the land of Israel, but once we removed those nations, that's it. Amen. There isn't any inherent country. It's not America and Russia. It's not the East against the West. It's not the communists against the capitalists. There's no such thing.
Well, it should have been world peace.
Huh?
It would have been world peace.
Well, we're going to see what it's going to be. Good. Excellent. So what we hold, the premise is that we create our enemies. In other words, when the Jewish people are off track, we recount the expression that was asked right before Amalek comes on the scene the first time, which is Hayesh Hashem b'kibenu im ayin, right? So what we say is that if God doesn't live within the Jewish people, we're going to talk more about that, but if God doesn't live within us, then we will have enemies. And it's a tall order.
Or just
As a reflection of the reality. If we're not one with God, if it's not absolutely in stride, then there's a dysfunction in the world, and Amalek materializes. So let's say, for example, if the Jewish people are worshiping God, right? Basically worshiping God or serving God, but the Jewish people are not immersed with God, are not clinging to God, then the system is out of kilter, and we have a demand, so to speak, a demand to fix it, and the fix it is Amalek. Now, it's not a great fix it, right? Not a good fix it, right? And it's not something we want. So we need to understand the system. And when you see Ahashverosh in this thing, that's exactly where he was moving us. So let's go back and then we'll pull the pieces together.
Wait, Ricky, dedicate the class.
Yeah. So we're going to dedicate the class to the Refuah Shlema of Rachel Bat Chaya. Kadosh Baruch Hu should grant her a complete and quick recovery in all and every area of her needs. And Refuat HaNefesh, Refuat HaGuf, Amen Ken Yeh Ratzon. Okay, so I think we said last week, but we'll recap very quickly, that Ahashverosh, all the names that we use in the Megillot, right? All these names are never real names. Never real names, right? They're made up names. They're names that are applied to people in order to tell a story. So we're going to talk about Esther's name. Her first name given was Hadassah. A little bit of a curious name. The name we applied to her is Esther. The name we give to Mordechai, Mordechai. Is that a real name? I don't know. We'll see. The name Ahashverosh is clearly not a real name. The same way Paro is clearly not a real name. These leaders who fought and led the wars against the Jewish people. So Ahashverosh, we say, is an acronym for Achiv Shel Rosh, the brother of the head, right? I think we mentioned this last week. Did we, Rama?
No,
Okay.
sound familiar.
All right, I'll check with you. Achiv Shel Rosh, the brother of the head. The head, our rabbis say, is the snake in the Garden of Eden. So the snake in the Garden of Eden. Hold on for this one. Let's see if we're good with this one, because this is a little bit out there. The snake in the Garden of Eden is that element in creation that has come, to trip man up. Right? Now, what do we hold? We hold that the kilipa, the shell, comes out first, and then the more potent entity. So If Achashverosh is the brother of the snake, he's worse. He's worse. Beautiful. If he's the brother of the snake, he is worse. He came later.
As I said, that the shell comes out first and then.
Yeah, the kilipa, the shell comes first, and then comes that which is more robust, is more powerful, right? So same thing with Esav and Yaakov, right? Esav comes first. Esav has limited reach. Esav has limited influence. Esav is this world guy. Yaakov follows. Yaakov has massive reach. Yaakov can connect both worlds. So we say as follows: Achashverosh, Achiv Shel Rosh, how are you? The brother of the snake. That's where he gets that name. Okay? If he's the brother of the snake, and the snake is the Mr. Evil, that Mr. trip people up, then his brother who follows many, many years later is a much better, stronger, more potent version of that no good Nick than he was. So, Achashverosh is not a king who was many years ago. Achashverosh is a force in the world that will perpetually be there that we need to be aware of. And therefore, the story of Purim is not the story of then, it's the story of now. And in the case of Purim, it's the story of the forever now. Because there will always be an Achashverosh movement, right? Okay, there won't always be an Achash movement, but there'll always be an Achashverosh movement. So we'll talk about that more. So to frame it, we're talking about a very different approach to the Megillah, which I feel very strongly is the only approach. Because if we read it as something that was, as a story that happened, it doesn't make any sense that it would become the story and the perpetual story and the story that stays with us forever. So let's start to line up the pieces. This is the story. In other words, if I want to open up a book and look at the challenges that I have as an individual and the challenges that the Jewish people have as a people in owning the values that we want to own and growing to the greatest level we could grow to, then this is the book to open. What do you mean? Shouldn't I open up the laws of this or the laws of that? Yeah, you can open that also. But if you want to get deep inside, this is what you want to open. Okay? Therefore, whatever is talked about is still being talked about and completely relevant. Okay. So that starts us up, right?
Where does it say? I know you said last week that this was the book that's going to go with us to the future. This and the Chamisha Shekharah.
Yeah.
Is that like a midrash or is that?
No, it's Gemara. It's straight in the Gemara. We have a number of different sources. Harambam brings it down. The Al-Sheikh HaKadosh brings it down. We have, it's not, Rambam, for example, he says, Maimonides says, Nebi'im ketuvim atidim nipatel legamre. He says everything after the first books, the 5 books of Moshe Rabbeinu, is going to disappear altogether, other than this. And the Avad, though, he says, he's commenting on the Rambam, he says that they won't disappear completely. These are the Rishonim, these are the giants of 1,000 years ago. They won't disappear completely, but it'll be sidetracked. These will be sidetracked. And then the Al-Sheikh HaKadosh says, as we mentioned last week, and it's worth repeating, he says, all the 19 books that follow the first 5 books of the Chumash, 18 of them will be either sidetracked or passed on. Why? Because whatever we needed to know from them, we got. Whatever we needed to know from them, we got. It's pretty remarkable, right? What do we?
All Nebuah?
All Nebuah. Great. The question becomes, to your point, well, what about Kohelet? What about Mishlei? What about Tehillim? Right. These were not Nebuah. So I want to interpret their saying to say that those ketuvim, those books that a man created will stay, because they end up saying also that all of the oral law books will stay. It's really turning things on their head. In other words, whatever God dictated to man, other than the foundation, right? The Chumash, whatever God dictated becomes less relevant or irrelevant, and whatever man figured out on his own becomes primary. Whatever man figured out on his own. In other words, all the explanations here in this book or that book or that book, that becomes primary. Your new insight on something, your new insight, your new thing, that becomes primary. What we're going to be studying, what we've developed, the ideas we've developed, not what God told me, but what I figured out. And by the way, if you figured it out one way and you a different way and you a different way, all of that will continue. It's all relevant. Yeah? Okay? Okay, good. So, what is Achashverosh's plan? Achashverosh has a plan. He says, if I can confuse people, if I can blur the lines between appropriate pleasure and inappropriate pleasure, appropriate indulgence and inappropriate indulgence, and I can move people and confuse people that way, I've got a home run. I've got a home run. So let's look at some of that and see what it means. I'm going to just close this. So when we say that Achashverosh comes on the scene, and he says as follows, and we'll see it inside. No, why don't we open inside? Let's open inside. Let's see if we can.
I never even thought of him as so evil.
He is top of the line. Vayhi b'yamei Achashverosh.
Okay, John.
Okay.
Well, if it wasn't for Haman.
Yeah, that's what people usually say. He's the dumb king who was taken advantage of by Haman. Right.
I think it's very subtle, and some say because you have to protect yourself when the time is there, when you look at the map.
Uh-huh.
You know,
Okay.
they can't exactly make the king look like a fool. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Even the place you have to read between the lines.
Right. Okay, great. Well, great. Beautiful. We're going to talk more about that. What page is it?
1252.
Okay, great. Vayhi b'yamei Achashverosh. Hi, Mary. How are you? Hu Achashverosh hamolech mihodu ba'ad kush. Vayhi. Whenever we see a Vayhi, we know what this means already. Something bad is going to happen. B'yamei Achashverosh, hu Achashverosh. B'yamei Achashverosh, hu Achashverosh. What does it mean when you see a who?
He's a prototype, he's not
It was like, anything.
He's the
Like
prototype,
ingrained,
right?
ingrained.
Beautiful.
It was like
He's
ingrained to happen.
excellent. So when you see the word who before somebody's name, it means that person was fashioned. Mitukan davar is the phrase in Hebrew. That person was fashioned to do X. So Vayhi b'yamei Achashverosh, opening headline is, this is not going in a good direction. Then it says, Hu Achashverosh, and this guy Achashverosh, remember we said Achiv Shel Rosh, the brother of the nastiest element of all time, right? Was mitukan davar. He was groomed and built for this. Now, when someone is groomed and built for something, are they passive? No. So the same way, the Havdil, a million times, it says the word who before Moshe Rabbeinu, right? He was mitukan. It means God put him to the test, gave him the opportunity, and he took it and he ran with it. So who Achashverosh means that this is what he wanted. He moved in that direction, and God enabled him to be in that direction. So God enables Achashverosh to be in a position to bring us the ultimate challenge. Good? God enables him. He gives him the oomph. He puts him in power, and we're going to see more.
Does that mean there was no free choice, or?
We're going to talk about that. Very good. We're going to talk about that. Hamolech mihodu ba'ad kush. Now you have another rule for learning the Megillah. Whenever you see the term melech with Achashverosh, King Achashverosh, who does it mean? It means him, Achashverosh. Whenever you see the word melech alone, excellent, it means God. So the fact of the matter is that Hashem appears a lot in the story, not a little. God appears a lot in the story, okay? And we're going to see that. So at this point, we're saying as follows. Achashverosh comes on the scene. He was the one who was the monarch. Mihodu ve'ad kush. Now remember, we're learning this as the eternal story of challenges to the Jewish people. What do you want to do with the words Hodu va'ad kush? How do we typically learn it, and how might we look at it now? It comes off as geographic locations. Excellent, right? But remember, we're stepping way up, and we're saying this is an eternal story. Me'ah be'esrim, what is it? Sheva, excuse me? Sheva be'esrim me'ah medina. What do you want to do with that? So we're going based on the Gaon Mivilna, right? We're going on based on his explanation, which again is based on hint and more obscure and an eternal message. And he says that Mihodu, Hod is not the name of a place, but Hod is glory, is sunshine, is brightness, and Kush is dark and late. He says that this king, this evil king, was the person who was contriving a methodology to control people's lives. Mihod, from when they came on the planet, ad kush, until the darker later days, when the sun was shining brilliantly with a new creation, a new birth, to the days of darkness, la'alenu, that are close to death. So mehodu va'ad kush means this Achashverosh, who is perpetual. He's not just from a couple of thousand years ago. Everybody puts their hats on. Sorry about this. Okay. So, yeah. So different head, different perspective, right? Okay, good. And then 127 Sheva be'esrim u'me'ah medina. The Gaon says something very interesting. He says that he put together a plan to trip up the 7-year-old she'eno bar da'at, who doesn't know better, the 20-year-old, who typically is someone who is at a point where he might be able to make decisions, but really not confident and complete in his decision making, and the 100-year-old.
It reminds me of when they described Sarah, how old she
Yeah,
was.
exactly. So we're going to call out each of those numbers, and each of those numbers means something. So one second, this is not a person who came on the scene who inadvertently gets hoodwinked by his minister and goes and does something bad. This is somebody who knew exactly what he was doing, who was primed for this, should get warmer in a few minutes, who was primed for this, and whose job was to undermine the Jewish people and to create not to create, but to take the things that we enjoy and to exaggerate them. For example, we have an expression that says that a person doesn't pass away with half of his desires in his hand, right? What does it mean, Mazal?
Means that person's plate is bigger than what he wants to put in his stomach.
Means that what? I'm sorry?
You don't have the means.
So one way of explaining it is exactly what you said. This way of explaining it is a little different. It goes as follows. Chatziyat taba, right? That a person doesn't pass away with half of his desires in his hand, meaning many will explain it as saying that whenever a person could live as long as he lives and still wants more. Good. But the way that we're going to explain it here is more on the midrashic, Kabbalistic side, which is that half of our desires are good. We say that a Shabbat or Yom Tov is half to the person and half to God. We sit around the table and we dress it beautifully, and we add beautiful food, and we add beautiful goblets and vessels, and we do that because we're commanded to do that, and Hashem wants us to do that, and that's a good thing. So here's where it gets interesting. This perspective says that we're not meant to be anti-beauty and anti-beautiful things and anti-life's pleasures. That's not what Judaism is meant to be. And when it says that a person doesn't die with half of his desires in hand, doesn't mean that nobody will ever be satisfied. It means that if a person lives 50% of the pleasure that God mandates there should be, in other words, if my life is 50% in this world and 50% in the spiritual world, the person will never die, he will live forever. It's turning the whole thing on its head. In other words, blank stares. I know, it's a hard one.
Saying the rest of the 50% is going to get fulfilled in the next life.
Yeah, so let's go one more time. Very good. So, Achashverosh goes like this. Achashverosh says like this. I got to find a way to get to these people. I got to find a way to trip them up, right? If I go hardcore bad stuff, I'm going to lose them. They're still Jewish people. They still have a certain value system. But if I take the things that they indulged in with permission, and I just exaggerate them a little, and then I exaggerate them a little more, then I got them.
Like the beauty of the Beit HaMikdash.
Excellent, right? The Beit HaMikdash wasn't built as a hut. It was a spectacular, ornate building, extraordinary ornateness, right? Attached to it, right? Why? Because we do appreciate beauty, and we do want beauty, and we do fill our tables and our lives with beauty, and we should. And this phrase that says that a person doesn't die with half his desires in his hand doesn't necessarily mean he'll never fulfill all he wants. It means if he engages the world 50% to the beauty that it offers, he will never die because he created the absolute balance.
So he's saying it's impossible to do them.
Huh?
He's saying it's not really.
No, it's very possible. But Achashverosh doesn't want you to do it. He wants it, yeah.
On Amalek, doesn't Amalek want to destroy us physically? Like,
He wants to destroy us, yeah.
so Achashverosh is not really essentially Amalek until Haman comes and really wants to destroy us physically.
That's right, because if he could destroy us spiritually, he didn't have to destroy us physically, right? That was the bigger plan. If he,
But I thought those are two different Asab, Amalek. I thought it's like two different like enemies that we have.
so let's leave Haman out for a little while. Let's talk about Achashverosh now. Okay, let's call him Amalek or don't, huh? I can't hear you.
With this approach where it seems to me like you're saying, let's entrap them in the capitalistic fantasy of constant, not only indulgences, but of wanting more, this never-ending, incessant stuff.
That's what we're talking
But it
about.
wasn't only for Jewish people.
No,
it was for
beautiful,
everyone.
excellent. It was for everybody.
It was a culture.
He wanted everybody on this page.
That's
He
what
wanted everybody on this page. So what does he say? He says, my intro to people in general and the Jewish people in particular is we're not ascetic. We don't turn our backs on beauty. We love beauty. We embrace beauty. In fact, the Torah goes so far as to say, the rabbis go far as to say that the holiest days of the year should be half the day, should be totally for you and your family and your children sitting around the beautiful table. And the other half could be for me. What do you mean? Shouldn't the whole day be for you, God? No, it shouldn't. That's the complex, beautiful balance that we try to recalibrate throughout our lives, right? The world is beautiful. This is a gorgeous day, right? This is a beautiful room. We appreciate that, right? We appreciate people's beautiful values. We appreciate song and beautiful wares and everything, as we should, right? How ornate was the Beit HaMikdash? How ornate was the Mishkan? How ornate was the clothing of the Kohanim, of the high priest, right? So we want the beauty. We should enjoy the beauty. And that was exactly where Achashverosh moves in. He says, if I can move that 50 to 60, 70, a little bit more, and I get them really chasing the beauty, then I won. Because then I reset the scale. It's not 50% them and 50% them and God. It's 80% them, or it's 51% them. And now we have a problem. Okay, now, when you put it in our own lives, right? Is this a real thing or not? How does it manifest today? How does it work? How does it work today? Now it's too hot, right?
What do you mean, how does it work?
How does it work today?
We're always
How
trying
do
to
we
balance
see, how do
the.
we see this phenomenon manifesting?
Yeah,
power?
I'm going to add to it one more thing. What do the rabbis write? That's interesting. I think it's really interesting because it's so real. They say, and by the way, well, I'm going to raise my hands first because we're all guilty, but I'll raise my hands. Okay, it starts with clothing. The rabbis say, how did Achashverosh corrupt the people first? With Gucci. Fantastic. It's fantastic. By the way, it's fantastic. He says it starts with clothing.
We have the same thing today.
Huh?
Fancy table.
Yeah, he says,
the houses.
so what happens? What did Achashverosh do first? He moved the people, he started to move the people in a certain direction by flaunting beautiful clothing. And then he moves from there to flaunting beautiful furnishings. And we're going to look at it inside. But beautiful furnishings, the pillows and the draperies and the columns, right? It's great. No, isn't it great? No, it's so this minute. It's totally this minute. 1 second. Huh? Yeah. And then he moves. Huh? Yeah. And then he moves further and he puts it into the walls and the ceilings. And then the rabbis say, and it's really also based on the text, it's how you read the text, that putting the semi-precious stones in the floor. Cool, right? I think people do it today. It's gorgeous. But he's saying, what did he say? Huh? Okay, good. But that's the whole idea. That's it.
Well, we have marble.
Yeah, we have marble floors, right? We have marble floors. So and how do the rabbis paint it? How do the rabbis paint? They say that he put shimmering fabric on the upper part of the walls to reflect the inappropriately dressed ladies. He put a certain type of fabric on the walls of the. So it was all very clever, very calculated. And guess what? It's totally every day and every year throughout time. And it's great. It's great. You know, Jamie did a report once on that subtle advertising to children, right? How in children's programming, they put all these subtle messages to tell the kid, I want to eat this thing and I want to buy that thing and I want to buy that thing. It's true. By the way, we live in it, we propagate it, we believe in it, we're for it. Nobody's saying it's totally bad. It's not. And that's exactly why it works. That's exactly why it works. So if a Achashverosh could come on the scene and just exaggerate what we want a little bit and just put a little bit of a thing, then we start rushing in a certain direction. And then what happens, that the beautiful clothing doesn't do it. It's not enough. I need the X. And nobody's making any value judgments here because I said, I raise both hands, right? Nobody's making any value judgments. But we need to understand what's going on. And if I can move people further and further away with these subtle things that don't come straight at them, now I put a par between them and God. Now he can do what he wants. And now maybe a Haman comes on the scene. We'll see how that takes place.
Where is that in the book, what you're saying with the wall?
Okay.
I don't
We're going
see
to talk
that.
about it now. We're going to talk about it now. So, first thing he does is, he comes up with, his methodology is based on corrupting everyone from Hodu to Kush, from the baby who's born with a bright, beautiful sunshine about them, to Kush, to the person who's reaching the end of his life, and therefore it's a darker period. Sheva be'esrim u'me'a medina. He directed his efforts to everyone from the 7-year-olds to the 20-year-olds. Again, 7-year-old is someone who is not bar da'at, who has no idea what he's doing as a child. A 20-year-old is that person who's figuring it out, who knows a little bit, who knows a lot, who doesn't know enough, who's going to make mistakes. He had another message for him, another marketing message for him. Yeah, the other marketing message for the 100-year-olds. Okay? Medina. Medina. What does that mean? Read it in this context. What does it mean? Amy, what do you say? Huh? Any ideas?
Medina.
What's that?
No, from the state, like what comes, one of the stages of life.
Right, exactly. From one of the stages of life. Correct. Yes.
An established, not necessarily a country, but fairly established with their routines and such.
Excellent. Excellent. Not a country, but just beginning to establish what their values are. Let's keep going.
What's the shortage?
Huh?
Is there-
Midin, from the side of Din, from the side of judgment, from the side of Din. Now it says, in those days, when the king Achashverosh, remember we said there's just a couple of times when king is put together with Achashverosh, that means him. When he's Keshevet al Kisei Malchuto, what does that mean? That he was sitting on his chair, on his throne.
The pinnacle of his career.
Huh?
The pinnacle of his
Beautiful,
career.
perfect. In the pinnacle of his career, great. When you say that someone is in the saddle, right? Contemporary expression would be it's in the saddle, right? Which means that what? That Achashverosh is prepared, thought about it, has his plan, and moves into action. Yoshev al kisei malchuto asher b'Shushan habira. Where was the capital city at that point? Shushan, good. Where was the real capital city? Was it in Shushan, huh? Our capital was in Yerushalayim, right? Our rabbis say a fascinating thing. Where was Mordechai HaYehudi located? Shushan. Was the capital city of Babylonian Empire supposed to be in Shushan? It was not. He moved it. Where did he move it from?
It doesn't sound right.
He moves it. Achashverosh moves the capital city. What did the rabbis say? That God needed to set up this conflict. What's that?
Saying it moved from Iraq to Persia.
That's exactly right. There you go. Exactly right.
I don't know the name of the city now.
I don't remember it in Hebrew, but he moves it to Shushan. Okay? So what do the rabbis say? They say that God is setting up this confrontation in order for there to be a direct conflict. Achashverosh has to be in the saddle, all set up and ready to go with his fully blown up plan, and Mordechai has to be right there in his face. And the reason that Achashverosh moves the capital city is to be where Mordechai is, so we can have this face off.
Right, I have a question. So God is orchestrating this, let's say, or enabling Achashverosh for this to happen because we needed it?
Yeah, excellent, and excellent. Now, Leslie, let's say it like this. Being that this is the eternal book, along with the other 5, what does that mean? When will we also be needing it? Forever, throughout time. Today, this year, this week, this month, right? So this is an eternal message, perhaps more than any other eternal message. And it means that there's an Achashverosh today, and there always will be. And it means that this push and pull is a perpetual one. And we just got the beginnings of a taste of what the push and pull is, but it's a perpetual one. So when we say that he's sitting on Kisei Malchuto, he's in the saddle, he's in his seat, he's armed, he's ready, he's powerful, he has the tools to do what he wants.
Also making himself very visible to everybody. Like,
Yeah.
It's all about the optics.
It's all about the optics. Right. Exactly. You're going to see that more. Bishnat Shalosh L'Malko. What does that mean? The number 3. Come on. The number 3 is a big number. When you see the number 3 in Chumash, when you see it in Tanakh, it's a big number. What does it mean? Huh? It means chazakah, right? What does that mean?
Very strongly.
Beautiful. So what do we say happens in we do it in days and we do it in years. What's the story? Let's see. What are some of the things that happened with 3?
But the third day was the hardest for Abraham.
Right.
The third day was the hardest day. I don't
That
know.
doesn't make sense
Yeah.
here.
First day when Abraham is confronted by God, right? His is a 3-day thing, right? What happens the first day? He's overwhelmed, right? He's overwhelmed. Go kill your son. Hey, my only son. I waited 100 years. You want me to kill my son? Yeah, go kill your son. Day 1, overwhelmed, emotional, catastrophic. Day 2, starting to figure it out, right? Day 3, he has clarity. Good, bad, or otherwise, but he has clarity. So we hold that the number 3 is always the number used to say it started out in some type of emotionally driven, unclear X. It has a chance to settle down, to become more objective, to become more based, and then it's ready to go. Like Matan Torah, excellent, the same thing. So when we say that Achashverosh, this brother of the snake who existed, didn't exist, we're going to hold that he existed. But it doesn't matter if he existed as a person or not. It's a movement. It's a methodology. It's a culture, right? So he is now in his 3rd year on the throne. And the rabbis go very far to describe what? To describe the powers of the throne. They say it was Shlomo, King Solomon's throne. They say it was a magical throne. Why? What are they telling us with that? They're telling us that he was sitting with fantastic power and influence, very well conditioned, very well planned, ready to execute. Good? Okay.
The whole vision of him.
Yeah.
What?
I said change Rama's whole vision of Ashkash.
No, forget that.
Right.
Huh?
Powerful. Yeah. I didn't think of it as evil.
But he's pretty evil. Chol sarav va'abadav. Chel paras umadai. What does that mean? Sarav va'abadav.
The people under him.
The people under him, right? What's the difference between a sar and an eved?
They don't. Well, Ebed doesn't have freedom.
An eved doesn't have freedom, right? So the sar does what? The sar are his ministers, right? So they're the people trained to move on his things, and the abadim, the slaves, are the ones to, just also carry out his efforts with nothing to say. Chel paras umadai. What does that mean? The army of Persia and whatever, and Madai. We're of course not going to read it that way. What is it? So it's a great one. You're either going to love this one or you're not. Chel, the army of Paras, the Gaon Mivilna writes, Parsa al Ta'ava. What does that mean, Mazal? Parsa with a Samech al Ta'ava. He leaped. The army, the ministers and their henchmen who would create this parsa, this leaping forward towards desire. And Madai.
When is it enough?
Right, it's great. There ain't enough. Madai, is there ever enough?
Super opulent.
Super opulent. Paras, let's jump, let's leapfrog to inappropriate things. And then Madai. Should there be die? There shouldn't be die. If there's never a die, if there's never enough, then is a person ever happy? No. Can a person get close to God? No. Can a person be close to himself? No. He's in the saddle. He's got the technique. He's got the program, and he is armed and ready to go. Now, let's compound it with something we touched on last week, right? Where are the Jewish people at this point? Where are they? And emotionally, psychologically, where are they?
The destruction of Beit HaMikdash, and they received the prophecy that they should be going back to Israel, but it didn't occur just yet.
Right.
It was in Sefer Daniel. They weren't exactly sure how many years passed. It's sort of
Fantastic.
like right before Moshe came down from the mountain, when they weren't sure when he was gonna come.
Fantastic. Now, do they have synagogues?
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
Yeah, I
yes,
wouldn't
no,
think they were so
according to
spiritual.
the Talmud, they had always synagogue, even during time.
Right. Very good. Very good. True. Are they structured? Are they?
I don't know how structured they are.
We don't know what they are. We know that they don't have what we have, right? Couldn't be. 70 years after destruction. Couldn't be that they had a lot.
Post-trauma.
Huh?
They're still post-trauma.
They're still post-trauma. Good. So what do we call this period? Hastarat panim, right? Where God will hide himself. Now, let's take this thing. You had the worst, catastrophic destruction ever, right? The Jewish people have 1,000 years in the land of Israel of spectacular existence. Spectacular, right? Led by Shlomo, King Solomon, and so on. Fantastic. Everything destroyed, La'alenu. Now they're in the diaspora, figuring it out, right? The prophecy, the timeline on the prophecy of us going home passes. People don't go home, right? We do. Some people go, but most people stay. And now you have this Achashverosh comes on the scene. Now, what do we say is going to happen when the Jewish people are forced out of the land of Israel? We say that there's going to be Hastarat Panim, which means what? Huh? Hashem hiding himself. Very good. So God is hiding himself. We're in a foreign land for the first time in 1,000 years. Post-destruction, we have a king, a ruler, who has a certain set of values that he wants desperately to push out on us. The circumstances are perfect, right? Why shouldn't it work?
Almost like he's offering them an egg elephant.
He is beautiful, perfect. He is offering them a golden calf. He absolutely is. And by the way, did this ever happen again? It happened throughout. Huh?
Hellenism had with the Greeks.
Didn't happen again?
The Greeks did.
Yeah, it happens throughout history, right? You come and be part of us, the Enlightenment, and so on. Be part of us, integrate with us. It's the story of the Jewish people. This is the story of the Jewish people. So
Also, this is the way they thought they were going to be able to connect with God because he was so hidden. Like maybe they had good intentions. Like maybe they thought, oh, this reminds us of the Beit HaMikdash. Maybe we could.
that's
sort
right.
of make it work. Like make it work. Like
Right.
for our benefit. Like in a good
That's
way.
right.
But they were
trying.
familiar to them.
It
It
was
was
a
familiar to them.
justification when you're
Right.
down,
What's that?
Most of the
like
time.
the justification when you're down.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You can justify.
Like people saying, oh, there's Jewish people in Hollywood. Oh, he's Jewish, oh, she's
Yeah.
Jewish.
Yeah.
So like the Chila, like they're looking.
So he makes this party. Sarei Paras Madai Patimim B'Sarai Medinot Fanav. Now here's all those people lined up to do his bidding. Now look at this. This is interesting. Bahar Oto, at Osher Kavod Mahuto, when he put on display his great wealth, Ved Yekar Tiferet Dulato, and the very precious elements of his standing. Yamim Rabim Shmonim Umeat Yom. What does that mean? This first party was how long?
6 months.
180 days. What do you want to do with that?
You're saying where else do we have 180 or?
Yeah, play with the numbers. It's a little bit out there. It's not my style, but I want to share it with you. I want to share with you.
18?
180. Give me 180.
Does it have to be 180 or it's 18?
It's got to be 180. If we're gonna play, let's play.
360 is to make a full turn.
Right.
So 180 is like a half a turn.
Right.
Nice.
So I guess he like confused them that like maybe. they-
Okay, good. You could go that way. Yeah. What else could you say about 180?
You need
Right.
that
Was it
much
something with
time
the
to
Mabu?
brainwash them.
I don't know. That was 180. Was that 180?
Didn't it rain for like a year?
So let me tell you what the more the gematria related rabbis say. They say as follows. That yeah, they say the
They love me
the
more.
year is 365 days, right? We rounded up to 365 days. Good. So and half the time we're sleeping, right? So it's 182 and a half daylight
Oh,
days.
that's what I got.
Good. 182 and a half daylight
This is
days.
out
I'm
there.
telling you,
This is
I'm
out
not,
there.
huh?
Out
This
there.
is out there. Don't. 182 and a half. Yeah, I didn't make it up. I did not make it up, but I want you to know it because I think it goes along the lines of the same kind of thing. 182 and a half daylight days. Person sleeping, they're sleeping, right? Now we're out there doing it, right? We always round up. 182 and a half is equal to 183. That's one of the liberties that we do in Gematria, right? We can round any way we want. All good. Good. Now, we have 3 days when nobody was taken off their game. 2 days of Rosh Hashanah and 1 day of Yom Kippur. That leaves us with 180 days. Therefore, the rabbis say that the 180 days, no, this is a short one. That the 180 days listed here is to tell us this was a full court press. Every opportunity, every hour of daylight, every venue, every way they could. And the only time it couldn't work was during those 3 days. Now, then it says, when he says that there was a 7-day party, the rabbis qualified, we'll jump ahead for a minute, we'll come back. The rabbis qualified and say he couldn't do it during Shabbat. They say the 7-day party, right? The next party is the 7-day party, is meant to highlight the 6 interim days, and that's when he was effective. So it goes something like this. Either Achashverosh was very effective every waking day, every hour of daylight, he was very effective. And was there a 180-day party? Maybe there was, but maybe there wasn't. And maybe this is coming to teach that when this happens, it's going to be constant, it's going to be subtle, it's going to be unrelenting. That this type of she'ifah, this type of pushing, interest, desire that we get pulled into will be complete, right? Overarching, every waking hour. So the rabbi said, was the party 180 days? Maybe it was. Maybe it was at that point. And maybe it wasn't. And if it was, it's meant to tell us that forever and ever, these types of draws and these types of desires will be in our face all day, every day, but for those 3 days of the year, let's say.
It doesn't
Okay,
say that they went to the party. It just says that
that's right.
Achashverosh showed them.
That's right.
So.
Even better.
Right,
It doesn't
right,
say they
right.
went to
just
the party.
witnessed, it was all around them.
It was all around them. Great.
Is that considered assimilation?
100%. That's exactly what we're talking about. This is everything. This is exactly what we're talking about, right? And why was this rougher than Egypt? It was much more threatening than Egypt.
Bitter.
Huh?
It wasn't
They were
bitter.
unaware.
It wasn't better.
Unaware.
Unaware. No, the people. It's like now, 80% of Jews, right?
But I say it's like now, it's billboards, commercials, like the subtle.
Yeah,
and
Yeah.
then the next, like, no.
yeah,
And even more
exactly.
now with social media and just.
Exactly. It's so pervasive and it's so powerful. And by the way, it's very effective.
Constant exposure.
It's working. It's working, right? It's working. That's exactly what we got. That's what we got. Now, if maybe we read this way many years ago, maybe we would have taken a different opinion to people who didn't grow up in the Syrian community or the Orthodox community, who we ignored for the last 50 years, right? The Orthodox community will 1,000,000% be held accountable, each of us individually and collectively, that we let 8 out of every 10 Jews marry a goy in this country. This is catastrophe. Catastrophe. By the way, that's exactly what we're talking about here. America was more successful than Ahasuerus. America wiped out 80% of post-Shoah, post-Holocaust Jewry in the most kind way.
Right.
That's right. Huh? What?
Exact parallel.
It's the exact parallel. It's exactly what we're looking at. So if we read the story not as some dumb guy who was manipulated by a very crafty evil guy, and this, that, I don't need that story. There are much better stories in Jewish history, much more compelling. But if you're going to tell me this is a story of our lives, our parents' lives, our children's lives, and therefore we've got to change our game, now you're talking about something different. Yeah.
Is this driven, it's not, it's his whole attitude, this whole thing, is it driven by anti-Semitism or is it just driven by his mentality, like his?
Beautiful. Not true.
Power, just power, just-
By the way, America is not an anti-Semitic country. The most welcoming country ever, right? For the Jewish people, maybe in 1,000 years, right? Most welcoming country. It's not an anti-Semitic thing. In fact, it wins with the opposite. There's probably no finer people on the planet than the Americans. Who is better than an American? Really nobody. Really nobody. That's the problem. Because it's not based in overt. It's just based in accessibility. It's accessibility, right? He didn't excuse the example, but he didn't bring the prostitutes into the party. He let their silhouettes shine on the draperies. That was the brilliance. That's the brilliance. So in America, what did we do? We gave the Jewish people, Christine and Joanne and Anthony and Chris and whoever they might be. These are fantastic people. They're moral. They're honorable. They're honest. They're the best. They're the best. Why not? Why not? Right? That's what we're talking about here. So the 180-day party is talking about an acculturation led by the leader in that case. And we're not going to say that America had an overt mission to assimilate Jews. We're not going to say that, although that might be true, but we're not going to say that. That might be true. And a few hundred years from now, we might find out in some protocols somewhere of America that was the case, but we're not going to hold that way. But in this case, it was true. This is much worse than Egypt. In Egypt, we were enslaved, but we had an identity. We knew who we were, and there was no breaking out of it, right? Although at the end, a lot of people stayed behind, right? But essentially, hard to break out of it. A Jew is a slave. A Jew is not a nobleman. A Jew can never be a nobleman. You make the Jew a nobleman, it's much more dangerous, right? Of Hitler, you mach shemo, all he had to do, if his hate wasn't so blind and endless, let the Jews continue. They were assimilating like crazy, right? You don't have to kill them. In another generation, you're not going to know who they are.
Also,
Yeah.
like when you're saying that he has the party for his Avadav, it's just contrasting what was going on in Egypt with slaves. They would never have a party for the slaves. So here he's
Nice.
inviting his slaves to the party.
Beautiful.
That's good.
This is the story. This is the story. Let's see. We'll do one more quick point. This one's a great one. Look at the end of verse 5. Bechatzer ginat bitan hamelech. What does that mean? In the courtyard, end of verse 5, in the courtyard of the garden, of Bitan Hamelech. What does that mean? Where was the party held?
In his
Courtyard
courtyard.
of
In the courtyard with the garden of the king, right? Huh? Palace, good. So what do I need the extra terms for?
That's Hashem now, right? Because it doesn't say.
Beautiful. It's great. Now you're working it. Great. So talk to me. What does that mean?
Like they're doing it in God's world.
In God's world. Beautiful. So tell me. Chatzer, what is it? Chatzer, Ginat, Bitan. In the courtyard to the garden of the house of the king of God. You can see Bet HaMikdash or
Gan Eden.
Gan Eden. Beautiful. the rabbis say, what was going on here? What was going on here was Achashverosh taking the step, combining the chatzer, which the closed door or the corridor or the anteroom, the outside room, which is this world, with the garden, the next level up, with the house of the king. So what Achashverosh was doing was he's collapsing all three, and he's saying or trying to prove that the tum'ah, the impurity, it goes, you know what? I'm going to say it differently. I want to say it differently. It goes like this. What this is coming to tell us is this is the corridor to the garden, the house of the king. Okay? So, and as Serene caught, the king, when the word king is said alone in the Megillah, it's talking about God. So what we're going to say here is that the tum'ah, the impurity that he was promoting, would flow way up, all the way up, from the corridor, which is this world, to the garden, which is the lower spiritual world, to the higher spiritual world. So therefore, if you want to tell me that what happens here stays here, it's not true. So if you take a step back, if you did nothing else in the Megillah, and you just looked at these 4 or 5 verses, it changes it completely. Now what we have to do is we have to look at what was Vashti's role here. What do we need her for? It seems like just it seems like a sideshow. What do we need Vashti and that whole story? And she made her own party, and then he killed her. If we're going to say that this is about the acculturation, the negative acculturation against the Jewish people and people of morals throughout time, and it's a constant challenge, then the Vashti story is a little bit of a curveball.
It's almost like she stood up to him.
Right, we got it right. Yeah, and the whole thing is absurd. And he executes us so that he should prove the point that the man is the king in his house. But it makes no sense in general. If you read the story the way it's typically written, it makes no sense. And it makes no sense if you read it the way we're reading it. One other quick thing. If this guy was so bad, why does Mordechai keep him alive? Right? Mordechai overhears the conversation of 2 people plotting to assassinate him. He was the king of, let me ruin the Jewish people. If I could take that guy out, wouldn't I take him out? He could have been taken out. Now, you're going to say somebody, the common theory in that is there'll be somebody worse behind him. But this is overt where Mordechai saves him. He saves him. He calls these guys out. How does that make any sense? Doesn't make any sense. When Esther comes on the scene, why doesn't she tell them who she is? If she views, and Mordechai views, the Jewish people as a threatened minority, and the beautiful princess makes it to the castle, shouldn't the first thing she says, these are my people, protect them, these are my people, don't change the school's curriculum to teach these crazy values, don't do it to my people? Isn't she the queen?
They were playing a long game.
They were playing a long game. Super. So we're gonna have to figure out what that is. We'll figure out what
I
that is.
can't imagine if somebody was planning to kill Hitler and we would say, oh, they're planning to kill him.
Right.
Like,
So that's-
If it was that way, you would have killed him.
Right,
You would have killed him.
let them kill him.
right.
Right. So the question is, why not here?
Maybe she
Why
didn't
not
know.
here?
Because it wasn't about Achashverosh, like it wasn't one person, it was like a
That's right.
whole
Good.
mentality.
So we're gonna talk about that more. Excellent.
So why is it so cryptic? And do you think that, like, these messages that you're out, regular reader doesn't read?
Okay, so beautiful. So answer Rama's question. We'll end with that. Why is it so cryptic? Why is it so cryptic? Why couldn't you just tell me the story?
Then, the people that read it, let's say, assuming Mordechai and Esther wrote it, right? So let's say people read it like right after that. Did they read it like this cryptic way, or did they read it?
What do you say?
If it's a book.
I
for
would
all
think
time,
they
Right.
understood.
It has to be, it has to.
If it's a
They-
book for all time, then it has to be understood on this level. It's interesting. I'll tell you a quick story very quickly. I was looking back at my notes from the past years when I taught this, and I taught it on a fairly good level, but nowhere near this type of thing, and I couldn't even look at them anymore. I said, whatever level I taught it out,
Makes sense, I think. It's silly.
it's yeah, it's not serious.
So you remember when we did book club on this, you and the book club when we did
Yes.
Megillah?
Yes.
I don't remember the
The
name.
fictional
The
book
Gilded
where it's
something.
yeah, it was so-
No, it was great. It was the whole world of us realizing, me realizing that there's.
You can't read it on surface value.
Fictional book about Queen Esther, but it was
Ah.
secular something, and I was so upset about the book. I came to the book club so angry. What are all these made up stories? How dare they mess with their
No, but
plot?
that was made
And
up,
blah, blah,
that
blah.
was fiction.
No, when the woman came and spoke, she told us so many,
other
90% were from Midrash.
Wow.
And the layman, like, you know, at post high school, this was years later, I was so taken aback. And it opened up the world of
Fantastic.
so much more
Yes,
learning
yeah,
than what
sure.
we did.
Yeah.
That's where you gotta be. That's where you gotta be. It's much harder. It hurts sometimes. It hurts, right? But now you really see why its message is. By the way, it's short. It's not a
Right.
long
Shouldn't
thing,
take so
right?
long.
It's short,
so much
and
to
it's
say.
so obscure, and that's why we have to delve and do and figure it out and own it.
But you don't think that, like you're saying, this is not a book of Nebuah, but you can't be that God didn't help them write this book. Like, it can't be that every.
Oh, you're right. Great point. That's why we say beautiful. What did we say last week, if you remember? Beautiful, meaning what?
People to write.
Right.
I was gonna say, it can't be that they wrote the book without any Nebuah, because we were saying that only the books that were not Nebuah are gonna continue.
Right.
But they're saying that someone to Ruach HaKodesh, this is not really Nebuah, but this, that you're so like.
On
in
such
it,
a high
at
level
a high
that
level,
you-
you're able to like process everything.
Exactly. It puts your intellect, moves your intellect to such a high level that you can,
It's a big responsibility. to
Right.
write this book.
but that's why it's better than the book.
All time.
Right.
Did they know that when they wrote it, that it was gonna be a book that lasted even after?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. I think so.
Do you think it's supposed
Yeah.
to be read at surface value or?
When Mordechai and Esther said that this book should be read every year forever and ever. Oh, but then there's another quick rub. I'll just tell you real quick, something to think about. We'll get to it, God willing. What about the mitzvot of Purim? Right? The mitzvot of Purim. We're a bunch of steps away from that. You know, the Mishloach Manot, Matanot Evyonim, reading the Megillah, the Suda. Now you have to go back at some point. We're going to go back and figure out how those mitzvot are an antidote to this message. And when doing that, the trick when doing that is don't do a quick and easy one. If we're going to say that these are the messages for eternity, we have to posit the mitzvot on the same level.
But I guess it's, I mean, on a surface level, it's compassion and always thinking about others and being giving and.
Right, is that enough?
Chad's getting together with your family,
Right.
community. No,
Gotta
it's
be
not
more.
enough.
It's gotta be more.
Yeah.
Great.
I'm
Thank
thinking
you.
about Reading the Megillah is always reminding.
Right. Yeah, the reminding is, yeah.
It's funny, one of my kids said, before broke down with Israel, Mara said this, he said, wow, now I really understand why we have to do all that Passover stuff every year, like, we have to, we need that reminder that God could save us.
Yeah.
Because we're in the tricky situation that we think we're safe.
But we're
Exactly.
we're in a situation, we get it.
Exactly.
It's like.
Exactly.
It's not overt,
Right,
right? It's
yeah, that's right.
especially.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You too. Good.